All right, let's go ahead and bow for a word of prayer. God, thank you for marriage. Thank you for we can have a spouse who we can work together with, and we can help one another, and we can bring honor and glory to you. We pray that you'll help us as we think about fundamentals of having a good partnership and what that takes, and how we can pass those things that we've learned in our marriages and our life. Well, we can share those with one another, and we can share those with our children and our grandchildren so that they can have a head start in having a successful marriage. Help us as we discuss today that it'll be good and beneficial and profitable for us and bring you honor. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, does that sound funny? Does the speaker sound funny? It's like a reverb. No, it's not that. Maybe it's just me. All right, so today we're looking at lesson 6, building a strong partnership. This is our last lesson on marriage, and next time we will go into raising children. And that lesson is printing off right now. So, like I said, this whole class, this whole quarter is just an overview. It's an introduction to a whole bunch of different relationships that we have in our families. We were going to go talk about in-laws later on and how we deal with that, and how adult children deal with their adult parents, and how adult parents deal with their adult children, and how all those things shift over time. And so our relationship and how we interact with our kids is going to change, as they grow up and as they take responsibility. And one day, as we really have a responsibility to listen to them and to make their life easier as we get older, right? So as we get older and we need their help, we have to still apply the golden rule and do things that are going to be helpful to them instead of having things always done our way. And that's a challenge, I think, as that relationship sort of changes. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But today it's just a foundation about how marriage can help us build in our life as we have a partnership. So the first reading there was Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and verse 19. And the 4 major points that we're going to talk about is how when you have a marriage and a good partnership, and I know that we don't like that word partner because it's too generic, but I think it does add an element to understanding what a marriage is. It is a partnership, and that means there's only 2 of us, and it is a one that we need the other one, and we're working together towards common goals, and we're not working against each other. And so many marriages, I think, fail because each one is looking out for their own interests, and each one is trying to control things or set the agenda for the marriage, and they end up failing. And so as Christians, we need to see God's view on this and how we are to work together in order to have common goals and common accomplishments. So the 4 major points that we talked about there, in marriage, as you get together, you should have better productivity. You should get more done together than either one of you are getting done separately. And if either one of you would be forced to do the job of both of you, that would be trouble. And that's what a lot of people have to do, right? You have single moms, single dads, and they sort of have to fill the role of both husband and wife, male and female, and guide that family, and that becomes very challenging. And I think that should help us understand, maybe, when we see people in that situation, to be, graceful, merciful, helpful to them if we can, because they're pulling twice the load they need to be pulling. And then mutual support, whether in success or in failure, mutual comfort, and then combined strength. Those are the 4 major points that we're dealing with there. So let's jump into question number 1 right away so you guys can share your thoughts. Looking at these 4 benefits, better productivity, mutual support, comfort, combined strength. Come up with an example of how each of these 4 have strengthened your marriage. You can say, I'm speaking on behalf of a friend, if you'd like. You could say, I knew a friend that had this issue. Anything? I'll start us off, and you guys can jump in. Shelly's gone this week. Shelly is in Tennessee to see her mother. And tonight is the first time we had a home-cooked meal all week. We've been scrounging around, going out, getting a bite here or there, or figuring out something in the pantry that we could put together. And we have a house-to-house meeting on Friday. Shelly is a huge part of the multi-generational house to house. And so she planned those. She came up with the things and activities that we were going to do. And so now she's not going to be back on Friday. So Friday night, I have to work at trying to figure out how we're going to manage that particular gathering. And I forgot all about one activity we did last time. And so she did today on the phone. She reminded me, don't forget, the bingo that you're going to get to know people, play a bingo little game. So way more productive when Shelly's home than when Shelly's not home. My mom and I were actually talking on the way over here, because Shelly gets home Saturday afternoon. Hopefully she's not listening. Saturday morning, we got to get up, make sure, the floors are mopped and all that stuff's clean so she doesn't come home to disaster. So that's just one idea of, together, things are a lot easier. And both of our lives are better. And apart, they're a lot more challenging. So you guys come up with any of these 4 that we've talked about, that we have here, an example in your life that would help us. All right, Emery has one. And raise your hand, speak into the microphone when you get it. Somebody else raise your hand.
Don't laugh. Canoeing.
Okay.
If you want to make sure you're going to have a good marriage, go on a canoe trip before you get married. Figure out who's in front, who's in back, and work out the details of, don't paddle too hard. Do we paddle on the same side? It's a good tool to kind of communicate and kind of figure out your roles.
Oh, that's good. And I would add maybe a canoe race with somebody else. That adds a level of complication to it. Now you are competing, and so competition sometimes brings out the best or the worst in us. So very good thoughts there. Anybody else? All right, Phil has something good for us. Either he has something good or something funny. He's starting to laugh already, so this might be really good.
6 months into our marriage, we took a canoe trip down the river with a lot of other Christians, and my wife and I were in the canoe. She was in the front, I was in the back. And it was the year when the water had overflowed. The levels got really high over on the banks, and it was difficult. My wife had never really been in a canoe, and she didn't understand that if you get up in a canoe, it's not flat bottom, it doesn't work. So this is a true story. 6 months into our marriage, she got up, fell out of the canoe. The current took her down underwater, and she got trapped under a tree root in the water. And she didn't pop up right away. I was in the back of the canoe waiting for her. I figured she'd just pop right up, but she got caught. And she said it was so bad she couldn't get out. And the more she tried to get out, she couldn't get out. She got more tangled up. And then finally, just before she said she passed out, she just let go. And the current pushed her out, and eventually she popped up. I lost my glasses. Our preacher lost his glasses trying to get to her, everything. And I could never get her in a boat again.
Well, I think there's some good analogies there of life, right? Because sometimes when we're not going at it together, when we do something, foolish, like standing up in a canoe, or when we get trapped and there's nothing you can do. Sometimes in a marriage, as much as you want to, are there times when there's really nothing you can do to help your spouse? And that's hard. And sometimes you both have to just let go and resurface. Trust God that you're going to resurface. And that's a challenging aspect of it. All right, Carrie Ann?
I think, to me, one of the benefits is that I don't have to know everything.
Because Ryan does.
Yes. Yep. But we complement each other. Like, there was one day, hopefully he doesn't get mad at me for saying this, but I said, we were, talking about the bathroom needing to be clean. And I was like, well, it would really be great if you would just clean it. And he gives me this look, and I knew instantly, before I even said it for confirmation, you don't know how to clean a bathroom, do you? And he was like, well, you do. And so sorry. But I say that is that, he's never really had to worry about it. I've never had to worry about paying our taxes or, registration for the car or all of these things. And so there's so many just practical life things that we just make up a whole really productive brain, I guess is the way to put it. And that's really nice just to know that your other person has your back and can fill in the gaps.
Yeah. So your spouse can do things you can't do, and they do them better than you. And so recognizing that and taking advantage of that is very smart. And that's what God intends for us to do. Joe?
Which one was it? Mutual comfort, yes. So Susan's mother passed away in late 24. And so she passed away about 20 years ago. So when my mother passed away, Susan was there. She was a mutual, she comforted me. I remember Susan's mother, got very sick. She was in hospice and such. And I was there, I tried to comfort her. I think that I did, but I think it's from that perspective, it was, I had already lost my mother. I could not know exactly what she was going through, but I knew the loss, the pain. And so I think that's what I equated to mutual comfort. I hope that's what was intended. But where you can share that hurt because you understand it to a very reasonable degree.
Yeah, and your spouse is the best person for that because they know you better than anybody else. And so they know when, hey, it's time to be quiet. They know when you need space. They know when you need words of comfort. They know when you need to be distracted. And so that kind of relationship is very helpful. And you're not going to get that from your buddies. You're going to get that from somebody that you're sharing life with, who you're with every single day as much as you can be. And so I think that's an important aspect of it. All right, Mary has something. Shelley has always been supportive of me preaching, which is, I don't know if that's rare or not, but she has always been supportive of that, even from the beginning. When a preacher's wife took her out and told her not to marry me, because it was going to be too hard of a life. But she's just always been very supportive of me and what I'm doing for the Lord, and that's very helpful. Mary?
Sort of a variation on what Carrie Ann said, but dear Abby, I think it was, once said something like, God gave children two parents so there would always be a second opinion. So I know with my husband and I, we bring different things to parenting, and we can, stabilize each other in our weak areas.
Yeah. You got to have good cop, bad cop sometimes. You got to have somebody who's sympathetic, somebody who's maybe more straightforward in certain areas. So I think we probably have all found that in our lives, that our spouse has stepped up and filled a gap in our life that we can't fill. And it's been very, very helpful to us. Phil?
When we had kids, we both came to agreement on her staying home and not working a full-time job. And it was tough because, we lived without a lot of things. But we both were in agreement about that even before we got married. And it worked out. And then sometimes she would have to work at night when I would come home, and I'd watch the kids and put them to bed. And she'd work a part-time job at night. But when we needed more money for all the expenses of young kids, But she used to get some pushback from some of her friends and about not going out and taking on a career job and doing that kind of thing. But she was very strong about it, and I told her, no, just forget about it. Just stay home. And then I believe that's what helped my kids grow up really good, having their mom home full-time all the time.
Yeah. So when you make that decision together and you're both on board and one of you is not doing it out of resentment, you've agreed on that decision and you're working together at it, you're going to accomplish a lot more, and it's going to be a lot more peaceful in the arrangement. We had similar situation, I called it $1 million decision. When you think about it, 20 years of staying home, at $50,000 a year, you got up really quick. So you make that decision that this is what we're going to do, and we did that knowing that Shelley would have to go back to work one day. We knew that when the kids got older and out, that she would have to go back to work, and we just, she's working now, so that's the job that she has to sort of help us sort of cover some of those expenses that we had during those years. But when you agree upon that, it makes it a lot easier, lot better. Dave?
Yeah, I think that our ability to comfort someone is limited by how well we know the person, their history, their struggles, their situation. And I think in a marriage, all those things are known by that other person better than anybody else. And so just the ability to comfort is there based on those things.
Yeah, for sure. All right, anything else on that question? Brenda's going to rebuttal.
No, it's not about that. It's about canoes and kayaking and all that kind of stuff. Early on, I think it was before we had kids, but we got 2 kayaks and we were going to do all kinds of amazing trips and things like that. I think there was this expectation that both people in the relationship were going to really, really enjoy this thing that we were doing together. And it was, the idea sounded great, okay, but I was not in the least prepared physically or anything to do that kind of outdoor activity. So eventually, you know, when we're talking about, you know, go on a kayak trip, some people have no business trying to do something like that. And, you know, it's nice to be thought that you're capable of doing that. But in the end, I had no skills to contribute to that effort. It looked and sounded like a lot of fun. Kayak trips, we're going to go camping, we're going to do this and that. And it did not work out. So then you find out what your partner is good at, and you play on that strength. You might have to dump some ideas that you even had about what the other person can or is willing or is able to do. I like to think of myself as a young person like, oh, I'm athletic, I can do all this kind of stuff, and maybe there was a point where I was, but that was not my strong point, you know, later on in the marriage years. So I think being accommodating to the fact that you both had perceptions you had to overcome about, I hope this is making sense, but that, you know, be willing to change course or be willing to maybe try other things as opposed to sort of forcing through, we've spent all this money, we've done all this, you know, we're going to do this. And
yeah, you learn a lot through that experience as far as, hey, we probably could have had this conversation before we bought the canoes, things of that nature.
Well,
and I think recreation is an important part of marriage. And so sometimes that works out great. Sometimes there's some struggles there. And in the deep dive marriage class, we do spend some time about what happens if you have different recreational interests. How do you find common interests so that you guys can spend time together?
I mean, I don't even think I was honest about, I don't know if I can do this. I was like, sure, sounds like fun. Let's go do it.
Yeah, and so I think that's a great lesson in communication. Be honest. You know, if canoeing doesn't sound fun to you, just tell your husband or your wife canoeing doesn't sound fun to you and save yourself a lot of trouble. Now you might, you know what, I'll give it a shot, but before we go buy the canoes, let's go rent one, you know, whatever the case may be, just that open communication. And we've all done that. We've all assumed something and realized, hey, I don't like the same things they like. And that's okay sometimes, and you have to figure that out, you know? All right, so Philippians 2 is a very important passage just to life in general, how we deal with one another. And so this is applying it, discussion question number 2. In what areas of your life do you and your spouse function well as a team? And in what areas do you tend to work independently or even against each other? Have you increased in your ability to work together? Now, I would make this suggestion, and Shelley and I will have to do this. Somebody hold me accountable to this. You should go over this with your spouse. Whatever you guys wrote down on these answers. This would have been a good thing for you guys to do together, this lesson. And these lessons would be good for you to do together. So we could have a game show, and we could figure out if you guys got each other's answers right, like the old newlywed game. What is your biggest strength as a married couple? And Herb says, oh, that's not what Tricia said. So what do you guys have down there? And so Tricia's peeking on Herb's paper to see if they have the right answers, if he has the right answers. let's start with, somebody want to share with, this is a part of our marriage where we really work well together. And it has been, Carrie Ann shared a couple of those with, as far as the, him holding her accountable when she wasn't doing something exactly right with his dad, her attitude, or just this bathroom cleaning thing. I think they talk well. They communicate well, it sounds like. Matt has something. If you want to go jump straight to the funny or what I do wrong things, that's okay too.
We work really well together on our finances and kind of planning life, future stuff and goals and how we're going to deal with the, whatever, the car broke and now it's $2,500. What are we going to do? Amy gets a lot of credit. She is detailed and organized and does the actual nitty gritty, balancing the budget and doing the Quicken and all that. And then we talk about it, and I'm better at the big picture and not worrying about, realizing that like it's going to be okay. She tends to be a little more anxious. I tend to be a little more carefree, and we're a really good balance that way. There's some things that I'll have to tell her like, I see, but like I promise we'll figure it out. And there's other things where I've got these great big ideas, and she's like, well, I think that's a little bit too big. We need to scale that back. That's not going to, here's the numbers. Oh yeah, I guess you're right. That's a little over ambitious. So, and it didn't, always work so smoothly, but for a long time we work really well together, and I couldn't do it without her. And she'd probably say the same for my part of that, but we definitely have very different skills within that, but we bring them together very well as a team, and I'll brag on us for that.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Some of us, probably that's our weakness, financial things. One person wants to spend money this way, one person wants to spend money this way, one person's a spender, one person's a saver, and that can pose a lot of issues in marriages. Financial hardship and struggles, that's one of the hardest pressure points on marriages. And if you have those, you're going to struggle. And if you're able to figure out how to get on the same page on that, you're going to be better off. And the earlier you're able to figure that out, the better. And so, I think that's a financial issues is a good thing to think about. Are we good at this or not good at this? And if we're not good at this, what can we do to get help, to get better at it collectively? And if this isn't a strength that either one of us has, maybe we need to seek some outside help on this. So that would be honest with those kind of things would be helpful. And hey, we've made our share of mistakes. I don't stand up here saying that's probably one of our weaknesses sometimes, and we need to work on that a little bit. Terry has a strength and/or weakness.
I don't mean to sound like me and her, we got it all together and we don't have any problems. But I think both me and my wife, we function well in every area. Looking at, from the outside looking in, or sometimes looking, us looking at things from, our own perspective, it just appears like we're not working well together. I think God calls us, all things to work together for good. And so she may have a difference of opinion on something. I may have a difference of opinion on something, but it doesn't mean that the end result is bad. I think that you have to take it in a holistic approach, right? She may want to spend money on this. I may not want to spend money on that. And so we come to an equilibrium there where she's getting kind of what she wants. I'm getting what I want. And it works out better. And
conflict is not necessarily bad. We talked about that in our conflict series, right? And it means you're passionate about things and you both care about something. If you're not having some conflict, then maybe somebody's given up on the marriage, and so you're going to have conflict all the time.
So I think it goes more toward roles. She's got a role to fulfill in the family. I've got a role to fulfill in the family. And so from the outside looking in, it looks like there may be conflict there, but there's actually not. And then I put down here, I said, marriage is for life for a reason. It takes a lifetime to get it right. So,
Yeah, good points. I have down here, for the most part, as far as every day, Shelly and I, we have a peaceful marriage. We get along really well. We don't argue. The kids really have never witnessed us arguing, and they note that, and we just don't do that kind of stuff. But there are things that we think differently about, and we have to solve those issues. And if you solve it within the issue of the roles, I have roles down for question number 6, which maybe we'll skip to question number 6 after this one. All right, anything else? Question number 2, the Philippians 2 passage. Working well together, areas of improvement, or just a time where maybe you didn't work very well in this area and you fixed it. You found a way around that, or a way to correct that problem. I know this is hard to share some in a big group this big, but it's okay. We all realize none of us are perfect, and we're all working at being the best we can, and no one has anybody fooled. No one is perfect. Carol?
I guess we don't really work together, but
I don't know what happened. There you go.
because I like to garden, so I do the gardening, but he does all the hardscape. He builds things for me. He builds the raised bed gardens for me to garden in, and he plants the seeds and I pull the weeds, and so
That's working together.
I guess that is working together. So another little amazing thing that I've always done all the laundry, and it always irritates me that he has always taken his shirts off and inside out, socks inside out, and I always have to change it. And all of a sudden, after 40 years, he gets it. And he's so proud of himself for taking off his shirts without turning them inside out, and his socks. And sometimes he catches himself and he'll tell me, I almost did it, but I fixed it.
Every marriage has those little aggravations, right? When you take two people, especially maybe when you get married a little older and you've been set in your ways a little bit longer, you've been doing things on your own, now you're joining two people together and they have different ideas and they have different ways of doing things. Meshing together isn't always without its strife. And so figuring out how to work together is very important. All right, let's go ahead and skip to 6, and then we'll come back to these other questions if we have time. So the other question, I think it's question number 6. Let me get over there. All right, so it's close to the end before the challenges for this week. It's discussion question number 6. What practical strategies have you learned in your marriage that you want to pass on to your children and grandchildren? All right, Matt has his hand up already. What head start? What advice would you like to give them a head start? So collectively, we might come up with a whole bunch of good things to share with our kids and grandkids.
Keep dating each other. Keep pursuing each other.
Okay.
Don't. It's easy if you're not. I see it with people that kind of fall into this. Your roommates, maybe good roommates. I'm not saying that it's, but you know, we've always tried to take time to get away, the two of us, do little even date nights at home, little things like tonight we're gonna, go to bed a little earlier, maybe watch a little something and kind of, not talk about the finances or whatever. And so carving out time to remember that the two of you chose each other. Yes, the kids are important, but one day hopefully they'll move on and move out, and then you're gonna be left.
Hopefully.
And even if they don't, I mean, our kids are all home, but they're kind of adultish, and they have their own jobs and different things they're doing. And so if, at some point, it's going to be the two of you again.
Sure.
And then you're going to look at each other and go like, oh, do I know you? Like, so keep that connection.
Yeah, Bill and Marianne Grant, they have a history here. His mother went here. Did he go here at all?
Yes, he went here when they were founding them.
Okay, so they came to Portage one time when I was up there, and they did a marriage workshop.
Thank you, I know.
And one thing, they called it MRJs, Marriage Rejuvenation Jaunts. Because you always put a few dollars aside so the two of you can go away and spend a night together or whatever the case may be. So I think that's sort of what Matt's talking about, just making sure you understand that you're in this for life, and so you have to be building a good relationship all along. You can't forget about one another. Carrie Ann?
I think it was my grandmother probably that told me this right before we got married, and it was that you get to decide what bothers you. And so there were some things that I think each of us noticed about the way, our tendencies, how we lived before we got married, that I can't necessarily speak for Ryan, but for me, I just told myself I'm not going to get mad at him about XYZ. About this thing, like, I know that's how he is. If he changes, that's great, but it's not something that's worth an argument. I'm just going to pick up that slack and let it go. And I can't say that I've always been perfect with those couple of things, but it saved a lot of petty arguments.
Yeah, so let me just interject a little bit there. I think that that is a great strategy. If there's something that the other person does that you can just live with, and it's, you know, maybe not the way you want it done, maybe not the best way to do it, but that they're sort of stuck in doing it that way, if you can live with it, just live with it. But be honest with yourself. If you can't live with it, don't act like you're living with it, and then it just keeps coming back up over and over and over again in moments of distress. So I think there's a balancing act there. If you can live with it, live with it. If it's something that, you know what, really does bother you, have the talk, because they may not know it bothers you, and it might be an easy fix for them. Might take 40 years, but hopefully, because we all have that, right? Whether it's the silly things like where you squeeze the toothpaste, right? So how many of you squeeze the toothpaste from the middle? I can't believe you guys actually raise your hand on that. Exactly, that's what we had to do. We had to go 2 tubes because it drove me nuts that Shelley would squeeze the toothpaste from the middle. I'm like, what reasonable person would do that? And so there's things like that all around. And so you have to figure that out. Bonnie?
Well, I only have 60 years of experience, and I don't have my husband anymore. I married a Marine, very strong-willed, very strong-minded, good father, always said he was the head of the house, but we talked about everything before and he would make the final decision. But he always asked me, what do you think? Can you do this? Well, we did some traveling, and thank goodness we did, and then Bill had the stroke, and that changed everything. And thank goodness he was a Marine, because he had the strength of mind to, I'm not going to have you waiting on me hand and foot. I'm going to figure this out. And he did. He figured a lot of things out. We traveled, and we had some really funny times. When you're... Pushed him over on the street in Rome? I'm kidding. It was a cobble road. I did drop him out of the wheelchair in Rome off the street. But there was a couple of nice Roman people, a man on walking down the street and a lady on a motorcycle stopped, and they helped me get him back in the wheelchair, and I said, we are not going to the river, we're going back to meet the bus. But you do what you have to do, and I was not leaving him at that point because he wouldn't have left me if the thing had been changed. And that's one thing I hope my grandchildren, I know my children know, you stick together through the hard times.
Yeah, so marriage is going to have ups and downs. Sometimes marriages might have a period of time where one person is sick for an extended period of time. That's going to bring additional challenges. But you go in this, when you get married, it's for life. And so we've only had one kid married, but believe me, they both heard that from me, not only beforehand, but in the wedding ceremony, which I was accused of looking directly at my son-in-law instead of my daughter when I was in this section. But it is so important they know that. It's through thick and thin. You're going to have to stick together. And if you go into that attitude, it's going to be a lot better. If you have any doubts whatsoever, you're going to be in trouble. Debbie?
I think what was hard for me is, I didn't get married till I was 40. And I had my kids at 42 and 45. So I think for me, I was so used to doing everything on my own. And it was hard for me to, like, if my friends would call and want to go out, I would go, or I'd go somewhere after work. And, then I had to start thinking that I've got somebody else to answer to. So that was hard when I first got married.
Yeah, for sure. That is, you cannot do, you have somebody else now. I mean, it's not just somebody else, you're one. And so you're developing new friends, you're developing couple friends, which sometimes can be challenging. And you both need to have friends, and you're going to have to figure out how to make that work. Jason? Jared?
Something that can be extremely helpful is setting up your finances so that you live well within your means, so that you can keep that financial pressure off. That's a really difficult pressure on a lot of marriages.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people don't pay attention to just how much your own decisions affect where you are financially. And so you don't want to, buy the very most expensive house you can afford, the very most expensive car that they'll give you a loan for, all that stuff. Leave yourself plenty of room so that you don't have that extra pressure financial on yourself. Right. And just try to keep your financial house in order. And that's just really, really helpful to not have that extra pressure on your marriage. And then the other huge thing, probably bigger than that even, is when you're going to have kids, you need to align on beforehand, how you're going to deal with them. What are the house rules going to be? And have your house in order when it comes to how you're going to raise your kids. And before you marry somebody, you really need to talk about that, how many you're going to have, and how we're going to deal with them.
Yep, very good. Two good points. Jason?
Never married, but I've witnessed a lot of successful marriages, especially here. But as a lawyer, I've also seen bad ones. And a couple of three things that I always see the difference between the long marriages here, between y'all folks. Don't disparage, disrespect, or disagree publicly. Do have those conversations behind closed doors, and certainly not on social media. View the other person's words and actions through the lens of the fact that you know that they love you.
Yeah, that was one of the first points we made, right? That you have to say that this person that you're married to is a good person, and they're not trying to make your life miserable, and you have to give them that benefit of the doubt, or you're never going to work through things.
And then finally, remember, love is not a two-way street. When it's working like it's supposed to, it looks like a two-way street. But husbands are commanded to love their wives, period. Not if they are nice to you or whatever, and wives are commanded the same thing. And so when both parties are doing it right, it looks like a two-way street. But don't let your treatment of your spouse be dependent on their treatment of you, because your love's going to win out.
Yeah, we talked about there's no if in your marriage vows, right? You didn't say, I will honor you if you do this. I will respect you if you do this. I will love you if you do this. That wasn't there. And so we got to remember that. So anybody has something, go ahead and raise your hand. One thing is marriage is good. I think marriage has had a bad rap, even in society, and if our kids are listening to things that social media or podcast where people are not talking about the benefits and the goodness of marriage, they might start over time to not understand how good it is. So if they see that you believe your marriage is good and that they want that, that's going to be a whole lot better than if they think there's a whole lot of turmoil. So marriage is good. The most important person in your life is your spouse, bar none. And there's really not a close second. Your kids are down the road a little bit. Your spouse is the most important person in your life. You honor them. You've made vows to them. And that's something that you want your kids to know as they go on. Marriage will require sacrifice. You'll have to give things up. You'll have to do things you don't want to do. That's what marriage does. Make sure that you're part of a spiritual body of the Lord's people. You are not, and I was looking at some things there, even some secular things, some studies posted by colleges, and they came back to that point. The point was, if a spiritual agreement is one of the best determining factors on if a marriage is going to be successful and live up to what God wants it to be. That is a crucial aspect of it. I was listening to Brent Hunter. He does some stuff on marriage. I was listening to one of his things, and he says the number one predictor is your attitude going into it as far as if you had doubts or not. If you had no doubts going into it, way better odds of this is going to work out. If you had even, some slight reservations about it, it totally drastically reduces your chances of having a successful marriage. Love is a choice. That's huge, right? Because sometimes I'm not worthy of love. I'm not acting lovable. I'm not acting where I can be respected. You have to know that when that happens, you can choose to love your spouse. And you can choose to have the actions go along with that. Apologize quickly. because you're going to goof up. Appreciate your spouse. Do not take your spouse for granted, and make sure you communicate to your spouse not only that you love them, but that you appreciate them. Appreciation goes a long way. Thank yous go a long way. Just having, you know what, I'm so glad we're married. I'm so glad you asked me to marry you. I'm so glad you said yes. It has totally changed my life. Okay, and I have here, tell them you're proud of them as well. I think we think that we might be above that sometime, but you know what, I'm really proud of you. I mean, you're just the kind of person that I'm proud to introduce to my friends and my family and the people that I come in contact with. All right, so lesson 7, Jason should have those, and we'll make a transition to parenting. I think we have 4 classes on parenting coming up.